5 hours later, sleep-deprived, all-out war, doomed. 5 short hours later, we all sat in the U in the locker room. Darkness reigned outside. A cold wind blowing that morning suggested that our Indian summer had come and gone. Nobody said a word about the previous night's adventures. We didn't even look at each other. There was no tension, there was no taunting, there was no finger pointing. We were just tired. The seniors were a little beat up, too. Bowden's right eye was swollen nearly shut. He'd taken a frozen egg to the cheek. Slade's arms and thighs were covered in raw, pink rope burns from when he'd run into Grandpa's net. Of course, Yost was the worst off. He pulled down the back of his shorts to reveal a peppering of bloody splotches. He said he'd been up past 3, picking the salt out, scrubbing his ass with water and a soft washcloth. "That net," said Bowden sleepily. "I didn't even see that thing." "Grandpa set that up," said Keene. "He was our secret weapon." "Was that dude a Navy SEAL or something?" asked Slade as he stretched his arms over his head and yawned. "He's just a farmer," said Popeye. "Remind me not to mess with any farmers," said Bowden as he rubbed at the lump under his eye. Nobody said anything then. There was the flush of a toilet. Someone else yawned. Swartz stood up from the wooden bench where he sat and crawled under it, curling up in a ball. He was asleep and snoring gently when Coach walked in at about 10 after 6, holding a piece of paper in his hand, his notes for the next 2 days. "Okie dokie," he said, all chipper and hale and ready to go. He still hadn't looked up and seen Bowden's face or Swart asleep on the floor. He hadn't yet registered the fact that we looked like a bunch of zombies due to a week's worth of late-night guerrilla warfare. "We're going on an easy 5 this morning. We'll ride in the parade this afternoon. Then you guys do your date thing, whatever, but leave the game at halftime." He continued staring at the white sheet in his hand. "I'll be walking around the stands, checking up. There'll be big trouble if you're still around in the third quarter. You need your sleep this time of year." It was then that he felt something amiss. Perhaps it was that there were no groans of protest upon being told to leave the game at half. Maybe he was just too quiet. But he looked up, looked around at each of us, and saw what there was to see. He jutted his head forward, his eyes squinted. "Leonardo, you go to bed last night?" Leonardo's head was lolling around, resting on one shoulder, then the other. It seemed he had no control over it. He opened his eyes from the slits they'd been, barely and with what seemed like much effort. "Yes," he said dreamily. "What time?" asked Coach. 2:30, said Leonardo. Coach glanced around. "Bowden, what happened to your face?" Bowden rubbed his swollen cheek. He smiled sheepishly. "Leonardo hit me with a frozen egg." "When'd that happen?" asked Coach. "About midnight last night." Leonardo giggled. He seemed almost drunk. "Swart," said Coach, looking down under the bench. Swart's ribs were gently rising and falling. He was truly asleep. "Swart!" Coach said again. But Swart wasn't waking up. "You guys," said Coach to all of us, "look awful." "It was all-out war, Coach," explained Hyder. "The seniors wrecked our float Tuesday night. We had to get them back, so we booby-trapped Grandpa's farm." He seemed to believe Coach would find all of this amusing. "We found that shotgun Slade took from that guy this summer out on Promise Road, and we filled it with salt and we shot Yost, who was dressed up like a ninja with a chainsaw." He paused. "Well, he was dressed up like a ninja, and he actually had a chainsaw. There was nothing fake about that chainsaw. That chainsaw was the real deal for sure." "How many of you guys were involved in this all-out war business?" Coach asked. I was thinking somewhere deep down that now would be a good time for us all to lie. But at that point, it seemed our cards were all on the table, face up. I raised my hand along with the rest of our varsity 7, excluding Victor, and several of the JV guys. "So," said Coach, "you guys have been getting 3-4 hours sleep all week." We nodded sleepily. "And we got conference tomorrow and sectionals Thursday," he added. We all nodded that yes, this was true as well. "We're doomed," he sighed. And he was right.